You okay?
Oh my leg.
Wow, you're really scared. Alright, action. Shoot, I'm so sorry. Shoot, I am so sorry. Here, let me get that for you.
Thank you. It's okay. I'm okay.
This is a behind the scenes look at us filming a promotional video for a client who's launching a new podcast series. So the idea here with this video was to advertise the podcast by telling a story of basically two people bumping into each other, which then results in one of the person passing on the info on the podcast to the other person. We liked it and decided to do it. So our job here is to create the visual story, film it, and edit it. I'll show you some of our process here in this video, and at the end I'll roll the final product. Like with all of our videos, we try to be as prepared as we can. So we usually just start with talking through the story and then describe what the scene looks like. We go back and forth on that until we like it and the story makes sense. In bigger projects, people usually do something called storyboarding. We typically don't do that. And I'm not saying you should not do it. It is just that we typically don't do that for these very short videos. Anyway, we then create a script and get to work creating a shot list. Here we're just discussing what the shots could look like. Marcus is on camera on this one, Mia is on sound, and I'm directing, or at least trying. We also had help from Matti and a couple of Marcus' friends on the shoot day, which was really great. Always good to have extra hands.
Okay, this is my green screen phone. This is so when in post, we can put an image, don't laugh at me, an image on the phone that is something that we actually want, not just a black screen.
Whoa.
So, but before we got to this point where we start discussing the scenes, like I mentioned earlier, we usually create a shot list, starting with some of the key shots we know we need to get, and then start adding different angles and b-roll clips where we think it might be useful. This video idea developed as we discussed the concept with the producer, and she ended up writing the dialogue for it and organizing the actors, the approvals, and all that. We just have to show up and film it and edit, of course. In situations where the scene has some movement, we try to at least once do kind of a dry run of how we think we should capture it before the film day. This is really helpful when there are a bunch of people involved. At least we would look somewhat like we know what we're doing. But in all seriousness though, we just don't want to be figuring out where the camera needs to be and where the actors need to go on the set on everyone else's dime. So here we're just practicing the actor and the camera movement we thought would work best. A lot of the times we even draw out on paper how we want the actors to move and where the camera moves, just so we're on the same page. Sometimes plans change though, and that's okay too. Originally we thought it was more dramatic to have one of the actors fall down while running and bumping into the other person. So to make it safe, we were planning to use a safety mat.
There's a couple of key things that you have to pay attention on. One is when you're rolling, try to distribute the impact, how many body parts as possible, and two, like try to roll kind of idea.
Unfortunately, though, we ended up abandoning the whole falling down idea. It would have been interesting to do something like that, but ultimately it would have just taken way too much time on the set to do this safely.
1, 2, whatever. The one that's not falling. Right? So I would come this way, and if you're coming that way, right? So at one point, like, when would the impact be? It would be
right here, like at that shoot, because this is.
Or do you think it should be a little bit sooner so that when, like, you know, if I'm getting impacted, I still have one more step so I can roll.
I think we can try. So
Yeah,
like,
let's try one of two ways, like, right? So if we practice.
There are basically two ways we could have pulled this off. First option was to film this in 2 shots and 2 different angles. This is a pretty typical movie trick where you see the actor starting to fall in one shot and then we see them land in the next shot. The trick is simply to keep the mat off the screen in the first shot and remove the mat in the second. The person would be already on the floor and would just pretend like they fell in that second shot. The other method would be to use chroma key. We've done some chroma key in the past and it's pretty easy when the subject is at a distance from the area that gets replaced. So like a green screen or blue screen or something. But when the subject is contacting the green screen, it gets much trickier to paint that out. The reason is that light bounces off of other objects that you do want to keep in the shot, and it takes quite a bit of manipulation to make it look just right. So we were planning on using the first option, but again, decided to use even an easier option by just having the person drop their phone instead. We of course used an old broken phone for that, but it came up pretty good.
He has a PhD in zipper closing.
The reason we ended up changing this was that it was going to be pretty complex to pull off on the set, and ultimately it really did not add any value. It didn't help carry the story forward. And sometimes that happens, where we're on this streak of an idea and develop it, but then we realize that there's some limitation, or like in this case, it's just not necessary, and we go a different direction.
You know, if we get like really chatty or like start like doing stuff.
Shut up, everyone.
Right. It's like we gotta keep going. So if you could,
people.
so if you could just like.
So here we are on our shooting day. We only had one shooting day for this short promo video. We typically try not to schedule more than 4 hours at a time for filming with clients. Otherwise, we have to start thinking about breaks and food, and people can typically make themselves available for this type of shooting for a few hours with no issue. 4 hours is a bit harder, but any longer and it gets difficult for people to commit because, they have a life.
Marcus, you ready?
So, like with other similar shoots where we have a client, we create a schedule and a shot list to make sure we capture all the angles we need and also keep the shooting on schedule. It's a bit annoying to have to follow a schedule, especially when we're in the flow state, but it is nevertheless absolutely necessary. Just so everyone involved doesn't get super bored and we're not spending more time than needed, and we all know where we're at throughout the shooting day. Sometimes it does happen that we go over the allotted time, but not too often, and usually when we do, we can let pretty much everyone else go while we continue to try to get that special angle or B shot or whatever. So in this video, for example, once we were done with the dialogue, we moved on to the actual first part of the video where we shot the running piece.
Yeah. Wait, are we done? Are we moving past this section? We got our narrow
We gotta do one more. It's exhausting. Whose idea was this? If you could put the phone down on the floor.
Throw it. Just throw it.
Didn't know.
Oh. He said it had range. He didn't say
So
there was tension in
counterintuitive
him.
of you guys.
In this video, one of the challenges, aside from trying to effectively capture the moment of the conflict or impact where two people run into each other, we wanted the camera to be in motion with the runners. So Marcus came up with the idea of standing with the camera on his sister's longboard while I push him. And it actually worked pretty well. We did have to do multiple takes just because the shots were close-ups and then gimbal kept messing up on us.
I think what we have to do is have Peter stay more directly in front of us. Okay.
Because you can't really easily move up and down, right?
Well, no, he was completely out of frame. So sorry. You okay?
Yeah.
Let me get that for you.
Thank you. It's okay. I'm okay.
Cut.
I'm personally really not a huge fan of gimbals, but for one reason or another, we end up using one in at least some part of most clients' videos we do, and mostly because it just helps in post-production. Anyone can walk with a gimbal, but a gimbal can be cumbersome to operate in tricky situations like this where you have to make sudden adjustments or moves and it kind of starts to fight you a little bit. Of course, getting pushed or pulled while trying to maintain frame doesn't help. So during the shooting, Marcus kept saying, "We should have gotten the one wheel." And, that probably would have helped. Once you see the final video, you may also notice that there's a bit of space on either side of the subjects, and that was done purposely. We knew the client wanted an Instagram version of this, so we created this in a couple different aspect ratios as a final product.
Tying the shoelace, and as he's standing up, putting on the earphones, and as he's standing up, you kind of rotate around in front of him, right?
So a couple of notes on what we could have done better or what we learned. Because of the dynamics and the movement, we chose to use lavalier mics to capture the dialogue. And ideally, we should have used a shotgun microphone here instead. But the sound with lav mics is just really great. The issue is that they just show on the screen. Now, we probably could have done a better job hiding the lav mics, but in the end, the average viewer probably won't notice this, especially as they scroll past Instagram or Facebook promo on their phone. So I wasn't too concerned. Just that I know they're there, so it bothers me. But we chose to be practical and capture good audio, so we went with the lav mics. Another thing was lighting. It took quite a bit of planning to find a location that was not under a direct sunlight during the shooting process. So we used an app to estimate the location of the sun and aligned our schedule to the sun's movement and just kept track of where the sun was at. We purposely captured all footage in the shade, but we did want to add a bit of a spot on the characters, so we used a reflector to do that. It added a nice, almost like crispiness to the characters, and our gaffer did a really nice job lighting up the subjects. It was an absolutely gorgeous day with not a single cloud in the sky. Unfortunately, shooting on a day like that when there is harsh sunlight is difficult, and trying to see the screen to make sure the light is correct and the colors are right can be a bit tricky. So we just trusted the histogram on the screen and the false colors to make sure things are not out of focus and not clipping, which they're not. But what we may want to do differently next time is use the golden reflector instead of the silver reflector. I think the golden glow might just look a bit more natural than the silver does. The silver makes them pop almost a bit too much. So just need to keep an eye on that in the future. And it wasn't horrible or anything. We were able to tone it down a little bit in the post also, so not really an issue. So overall, the client liked the end product. I think it got a couple thousand views on social media and generated some traffic to their podcast channel. So that's really great because it did what it was supposed to do. It served its purpose. Great people to work with again. We had more hands helping this time than we usually do, which was really fantastic and a lot of fun. And I'll leave you with that. I'll roll the final product here. Hope this was helpful or at least entertaining, and hopefully see you in the next one.
We're in that time right now.
Oh, shoot, I am so sorry. Here, let me get that for you.
Thank you. It's okay. I'm okay.
What are you listening to?
Oh, just a podcast my church puts out.
Oh, I love podcasts. What's it called?
It's Faith Covenant Audio Podcast. It's our church's message from Sunday morning. I love listening to it while getting ready or driving to work. It's a great positive way for me to start out my day.
Is this the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
All right, yeah, I'll be sure to check it out. Again, so sorry for running into you there, but thanks for the great suggestion.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe we'll run into each other sometime.
All right, take care.
Well, hey, good morning again, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors on staff here at Faith. And
That was great. That was good?
That was actually really good. That was really, really good. Let's check
Should we
it.
just do it again?
Let's check it out. I think we're good though.